Welcome to our second instalment of the Village Law Initial Consultation. I'm Darren Lutton, admin at SEQFC, and I've got former Socceroo with us tonight and current player at Gold Coast United, Michael Thwaite. Michael, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, my pleasure.
All right, so we've got half an hour here where we're just going to have a basic chat about football and your career, and hopefully have a few laughs as well. So here we go. Now, I understand that you grew up in Cairns and that Saints were your junior club. Tell me all about that.
Yeah, I had one junior club, Saints Soccer Club, and it's very important for young players especially to be loyal to their junior team. And I played there for pretty much 10 years and then went on to play with a merger team, the Saints and Edge Hill, for 1 year, and then I moved to Sydney to venture down south, and that's when it kind of kicked off for me. Firstly in the Winter Super League with Sydney University, and then onto the NSL with Marconi.
So in your junior days, were you a gun as a player or just an average guy?
Look, I was probably one of the better players, in that younger age. It was probably about 12 where I really wanted to be a professional player. One of my biggest icons was Frank Farina growing up. One of my best mates, Zenon Caravella, who also played in the area, that was his uncle. And he really kind of opened my mind up about, playing for the Brisbane Strikers and for the Socceroos and all that. So, it was from that age group where, you're starting to train more and getting picked in Queensland teams and such. It was definitely up and down, it was probably about 15, 16 where I wasn't getting picked because couldn't physically compete with other players. But that's when you kind of got to switch on mentally and keep training and applying your trade. And then, went to my first year university in Cairns at James Cook University, and then moved to Sydney, which gave me more opportunities outside of Cairns.
So this would have been about the late 90s, yeah?
Yep. Yeah, so 2001 was my last year in Cairns, and then 2002 I moved to Sydney.
Okay. How was the pathway then?
It was difficult. I guess when you got to about that 16, 17 years old, you kind of didn't know where you stood. I think there was no real direct pathway to the NSL at the time. And I think, Brisbane Strikers used to come up and do clinics, and, I was the first person there and always the last to leave, as I said, like my icon growing up was Frank Farina. So I really loved the Brisbane Strikers and I wanted to play for them. And actually my first professional game for Marconi was against Brisbane Strikers, and I remember running on at that moment. I probably died a happy man, when I was 19. But yeah, the pathway, I guess, there was no real clear pathway, such as the NPL system across Australia now. But even saying that, it's, people in those regional areas like, Cairns, far north, all across Australia, they kind of get lost if they're not in those big cities.
So the decision to go to Sydney, was that for footballing reasons or study reasons?
It was a bit of both. I think I always maintained that I was going to get an education whilst trying to become professional. And as I said, like I couldn't get into the university that I wanted to with my OP. I got 12. But then after my first year at James Cook University, my GPA was kind of skyrocketed. And then I was able to get into a teaching degree at Sydney University, which was one of the top universities in Australia. And then, I got a football scholarship with Sydney Uni, which meant that I had to play in the Winter Super League. And then within that 6-month period, I got scouted from Raul Blanco, who was an ex-Socceroo coach and the current coach of Marconi Stallions at the time, and he offered me a trial. And then, within 6 weeks of being in the youth setup, I had my first game in the NSL. So it was quite a quick transition in 2002.
For any of the young people watching this, what do you think it was about your playing qualities that got you that scholarship, that got you those breaks?
Yeah, as I said, like as a youngster, you know, I always had the technique and, you know, I always had the work ethic and always worked hard, always believed in myself. And, you know, I put it down to, you know, all those extra sessions with my father, Glenn, and in the backyard. And just, I remember I had three sisters growing up, and I remember that he built me a brick wall because none of them used to kick the ball with me. So I was kind of just always, you know, became my best friend, and just simple things like that, like about being on your own and none of this, you know, this product that's out there now, like all the fancy nets and whatnot and rebound stuff. But it's just about the simple things and believing in yourself. But I guess, you know, when you're not physically developing as quick as other young men, that's when your mental side kicks over. And I guess, you know, they're trying to work out what the percentage that you use physically and then mentally. But I'm like, well, why can't you use both? So when I started growing into my body, very late when I was 17, 18, then all those coaches that said I wasn't fast enough or tall enough or strong enough, then, you know, I became like a 6'3" athlete with the mentality, to make it. So once I did get a chance and opportunity to trial at a National Soccer League club, then I picked myself against some of the best players, and I was able to compete. So got the contract.
So tell me about those Marconi days. Who would have been in the squad at that time?
The captain was Dominic Longo, so he was an ex Socceroo. Ange Costanzo, Mark Babbage. There was Joe Spiteri. Some classic players that obviously did so well in the old NSL. Grant Last at the time, who I was rooming with, and I guess I remember my first training session. We had a game like when I was in the youth setup there, and I basically put myself up against Robbie Ennis, which was an ex-Socceroo and currently in the Marconi first team. And I remember I tried like one trick against him, and I always wanted to compete against the best players of the team. So I thought maybe if I can, show ability against these top players, then, they give me more of a chance. And that was always my mentality, to try play against the best players. And, that gave me my first contract professionally.
And how'd it go, the move?
It was good. It was good. I still remember it now. And yeah, I used to be an attacking midfielder back at that age. And then, I guess I was a bit of a headless chook with lots of energy. But yeah, I guess that's what you have to do. You have to be versatile when young as well, playing lots of different positions. When I was first getting into the national team as well, played a lot as left back, but my left foot was probably for getting on a bus at at that stage. But you just play anywhere, I guess at a young age, when a coach expects you to play in a different position, you don't want to say, "Nah, I'm a centre back," or "No, I'm a right footer." You want to play wherever you can get the chance.
Sure. So from Marconi, you then went overseas. How did that all?
When the NSL finished, there was obviously a 18-month gap where a lot of the first team players went back and either went to their normal jobs or just played in the state league. But I always had the dream to play overseas, and after the Under-20 World Cup, I had a DVD which John McCain, who was playing in Romania at the time, took hold of and gave to his coach in Romania. And then, when he looked at the DVD, I was actually playing for Australia, and at that time we beat Brazil, who ended up winning that World Youth Cup. And I was actually marking Dani Alves at the time, and did really good job against him. And that gave me my first opportunity in Europe. Signed a 2-year deal in Romania.
Right, so we've covered a bit of ground there.
That's just the start.
Overseas moves, there's Socceroos games, or young Socceroos. I don't know where to go from there. Let's go back to that Brazil tournament. That was just a phenomenal squad, and a lot of players really went on to great things from there, didn't they?
Yeah, I guess our coach at the time was Ange Postecoglou, and the assistant coach was Graham Arnold. And I have a lot to thank Graham and Ange for, like to get me involved in that setup, because I was actually an injury replacement for Mark Milligan at the time. And yeah, and then later on after that tournament, because we did so well, and I had an opportunity to be in Graham's under 23 Olympic team as well. And that was one of my goals, to get in the Olympics. But unfortunately, I made the last camp and got cut right the last camp before the Olympics. And yeah, obviously, as I said, like growing up, my mentality was very strong, and I was always starting to set a lot of goals for myself, and that was one of the goals that I wanted to achieve. But when I experienced that kind of failure, then within 4 months, Frank Farina picked me in the Socceroo setup in 2005. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that when you don't achieve something, then you got to move on quickly and reset and refocus, your mindset and obviously where you want to be. And I was doing very, very well in Romania in the first year. And yeah, after my time there, got involved, as I said, in 2005 with the Socceroos. And then unfortunately Frank, got lost his job, and then Gus Hiddink came in and gave me my debut in late 2005 in October against Jamaica.
Tell me about that. Was it a text message, a phone call, a letter, email?
Yeah, I mean, I was involved, from June till later on in the year, and obviously going to camps and being involved in the Socceroo setup. And again, when you're playing against those types of players like, Harry Kewell, Mark Viduka, Tim Cahill, Jay Scalino, like Vinny Grella, the whole golden generation basically. But when you are training against them, and same situation like as in Marconia, and then you can kind of say, well, I can compete at this level, which gives you more belief in yourself. And then, yeah, I think that really gave me the mentality that I would play one day for Australia for the Socceroos, and I'm thankful that Gus Hiddink gave me that opportunity against Jamaica, and it went really well. We actually won the game in London 5-0. So, but then from that moment, from that game, it really changed my situation back in Romania, because once they saw that, they had this future international, then they kind of whacked like a huge transfer fee. I think it was like, up to €2 million on me to go to a new club or to stay within Romania. And then from that point, I didn't play because I didn't want to stay in Romania. And then for the next 11 months, I went through a FIFA case actually at 21 years old, and I ended up missing the 2006 World Cup after we qualified on that historic night with John Aloisi. But I was involved in that. But then after that, I wasn't able to play, and at club level, which affected my selection leading up to the 2006 World Cup. So I kind of had to watch that in Cairns, which was pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah. With your debut, what's the moment that really tugs at your heartstrings? Is it the showing up at camp? Is it the walking out on the field? Is it the feeling after the game?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was about putting on the jersey. Like and still now, like where I put a Gold Coast United jersey, I've actually in my spare room, I've got a collection of jerseys and jerseys that I've swapped, and it's something that I've always loved as a kid, growing up in Cairns. But I never, my whole youth career and growing up, I never bought a Socceroos jersey, never bought an Australian jersey, because that was one thing that I wanted to earn myself. So, when you're getting opportunities to play for the under-20s and under-23 Olympic team, and finally against Jamaica, winning that first jersey and walking out for your country, albeit with very, very long European hair, which Kusinin told me to cut it one of the following camps. But that was the style going on, and headbands and stuff like that. But yeah, like to put on that first Australian jersey was, again, just like my first time playing for Marconi against Brisbane Strikers, I could have again died a very, very happy person, and yeah, it means a lot. Those jerseys mean a lot.
Do you actually get a cap?
Yeah, actually, it's like a cricket cap, but yeah, I've got it actually framed in my media room, and yeah. So yeah, you actually get a cap with your number 485, and yeah, so it's got who you played against and the dates, and yeah, it's quite professional.
Nice. With when you're playing for the Socceroos, was there any player that you played against that just, or even in your club career, was there a player that you played against that just made you think, oh, I've chosen the wrong profession here? They have just made you look absolutely silly.
I can definitely give you an answer to that, because, as I said, like, Australia was really struggling for a left defender, and because I did really well under Graham Arnold and Ange Postecoglou at under 20 level as a left defender, I was more playing in that position for the Socceroos, because when Scott Chipperfield or Stan Lazaridis retired, and they just really had a gap in that position, so I found myself playing there more and more often. And I remember against Uruguay, when they came back after the World Cup, I played against Recoba, and he was left-footed, but he always liked to play on the right, and always like cut in, dribble in, but beautiful left foot. But I remember that game, in front of probably 70,000 people, and it was just amazing test, to play against the caliber like a guy that's played for Inter Milan, and such a aggressive type of number 10 type player. But yeah, it was embarrassing playing against me, because anything you would try and do to defend him, he'd just have secrets to get around you, and just little jinx, and just the use of his body, and yeah, he was an unbelievable player.
Yeah, you get the feeling that in that second leg in Sydney, that had he been on his form in that match, he just seemed a bit off. But had he been on, he could have just destroyed us, couldn't he? Because he had so many opportunities that he missed.
It's just like those type of characters. They just, and especially left-footers, they see the game differently and play with a different type of feeling and mindset. And very, very hard to defend, but. Yeah, you can just see he loves the attention. He loves the pressure of, playing for Uruguay, and with big stadiums and fans and stuff. Like, you can just see how he plays. He doesn't get intimidated. He loves pressure. So, but yeah, it was fascinating to watch in those games, and then to play against him was amazing as well.
All right, let's get back to you. So you're spending a little bit of time in Romania, and then you go back to Melbourne Victory. What was the story there?
So basically, as I said, like after my time in Romania, I went through an 11-month FIFA case, which now it's a bit different. They get resolved a lot quicker now. It's if clubs don't pay you for 3 months, and they have different rules now, but. Yeah, my case took 11 months, so it really took me a long time to catch up. And then I transferred to Wisła Krakow in Poland for 2 years. I actually signed a 5-year deal, but then I was always playing catch up after that period, like just to get match fit and the belief back in myself. And then after just under 2 years, I transferred again. Brann Bergen in Norway. Paid a transfer for me. Again, I signed there as a left defender, which was, probably the wrong thing to do at the time. But because I was playing in the national team, they saw me as that's where I played. And then after 6 months, just seeing how my wife was, she couldn't work. She was a nurse and then a sonographer. in Australia, real qualified medical person, but she couldn't work in Europe. And after 5 years, it was just like, well, it's time to come home. And I came back on loan to Melbourne Victory, which, it started off really, really well. We won the treble that year. But then towards the end of the season, I was actually carrying an injury, a syndesmosis ankle injury throughout the whole season. But then when it came to the end of my loan back to Norway, I decided I wanted to stay in Australia. And then I actually turned down a 4-year deal at Melbourne Victory and decided to sign a 3-year deal with Gold Coast United, just because Queensland suited us a lot more than Melbourne. As I said, like, we just won everything with Melbourne Victory, had all this success, and I actually didn't. Another quite a failure was, like playing a whole season, but none of the final series for one reason or the other. And watching us win the grand final in the stands, that was quite tough. But life goes on, and I went to Gold Coast United after that.
Clive Palmer, discuss.
Yeah, I actually still text the man himself. Every now and then, because Christian, the current coach who I played with, he works with Clive, and we're always talking about the good old days. But look, to be honest, like, even my relationship with Tony Sage is very similar with my time at Perth Glory, because you got these mining magnates and these businessmen that are putting a lot of money, like I'm talking millions over, Clive's was a 3-year period, but they were losing a lot of money. And, Tony's arguing the same sort of things now, and with now that it's kind of been separated from FFA, but the same things the clubs were arguing against now, that's what Clive was arguing for, because he had that bit of a feud with Frank Lowy, and just because he saw we were losing so much money, it wasn't sustainable as a business. And I'm sure he didn't foresee that when he first kind of got into it with Miron at his side, that he'd be losing this amount of money and not much coming back from the TV rights, etc. So and just with the stadium agreement as well, like, we're paying over 120,000 per game. It was just, and getting a crowd under 10,000, it wasn't viable.
Sure. Do you look back on those days, though, with fondness?
Oh, 100%. It was as I say, now even playing for Gold Coast United and telling people what it used to be like, playing at Seabus and Skilled Stadium. It was the best time of my life, because I had my second child. Like, once we moved from Melbourne, I had my first newborn, Portia, and then in the third year, when the club folded, I had a second newborn at that time, and we had a house, we had a mortgage, my wife had a great job, everything was rosy, and it was I was playing great football, got back into the Socceroos with Holger Osek, and then being captain in that third year and going through the hardship of dragging a team with a folded club. That's that was, again, it's a big life lesson and something that you never forget.
You then went to Perth Glory and then finished at Western Sydney Wanderers. Switching teams, is it easy thing to do with a professional player?
It's not easy, but as you can see with my story so far, like, there's always something that happens. Like, for example, like, if I was to stay in Melbourne, you would have had a great successful time, because they're probably the biggest club in Australia. We had Asian Champions League to look forward to, but in terms of my lifestyle, Melbourne didn't really suit us. Queensland, like, we both grew up in Cairns, Queensland, so we thought Gold Coast would be better suited to the family, which it was for the first 3 years. But then the club folded, and then you have to act. And I remember when the club folded, I was talking to Ange Postecoglou, who was deciding himself whether to stay with his success in Brisbane Roar, and then he ended up leaving back to Melbourne Victory, and he actually said to me, like, I want to bring you to Melbourne. And I said, well, I'm here in Gold Coast. I don't want to leave Queensland. And then Rado at the time in Brisbane, he said, they couldn't offer me what I was on in Gold Coast. So then I ended up saying, no to Melbourne, and then obviously transferring to Perth Glory. And then after 4 years there, we were happy there. Had a lot of success in Perth, but then in my third year there, we went through a salary cap crisis, which again, those things happen, in other codes, but you don't expect it to happen to your team as a captain. And then from then on, my mindset was like, well, I want to leave now, because it was quite frustrating at the time, and I'm sure Kenny felt that as well as the coach at the time. So, and then I went to Asia after Perth, which was another goal of mine. And then after Asia, came back to West Sydney Wanderers.
I guess what I'm getting at is the fact that when you're as a professional, there's always that talk, I'm a professional player, I just go where the money is, and they're paying my wages, so I just switch on and off from one club to the other. Surely there's got to be some emotional ties that keep you with the former clubs that you're with.
Yeah, exactly. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, there was always something that triggered my next decision. Like, for example, with Marconi, I probably would have stayed there. I think my first contract was worth maybe $10,000. I signed a 5-year deal. I was happy as Larry. It was one of the happiest periods of my career. But who would have thought the NSL finished? And then you're having to react. And then just like my situation at Gold Coast United, and then, with the club folding, and then Perth Glory with the salary cap crisis, like you can't predict these types of things, And then obviously in China and West Sydney Wanderers, I was living away from my family, who chose to move back to Queensland here. So I spent two seasons away from my family with my wife and kids. So, and that's having 2 daughters under 10 as well. So, I probably could be still playing professionally now, had those opportunities to stay in the A-League, but I'm like, well, do I want to live away from my family anymore? And then that's what made me come back to Gold Coast United. So, but yeah, and it's good. It's really nice playing for a club that, that meant so much to you before, for those 3 years. So I guess, when I do put on the jersey with Gold Coast United, it's a great thing. And that's something that I talk to the players about, recognising the name on your back and obviously your badge as well, like that you're playing for. But yeah, in a nutshell, like I would have loved to be like a player like Lee Broxham or something like that play at one club their whole career. But it's few and far between, like with that happening, as you can see with my story. But it's a great story to tell.
Sure. Look, we've only got about 90 seconds left. Just the fact that you have come back to Gold Coast United, it must feel like getting the old gang back together again with Shane Smeltz and Christian Rees. Yeah,
100%. I think having someone like Shane back in the team and out of retirement, to work with the strikers, myself and Christian to work on the defensive things, and Matty Osman, to give assistance to Christian. And I think it's good having players currently and coaches that understand how the club started and why it started. So it's a great foundation for the future, and that's where the future is, the girls and boys that are starting at 8 years old and right through. So that's the biggest difference. The foundation is getting set rather than just kind of plonked, like Gold Coast and North Queensland Fury were done to fast track for the World Cup bid, So, now it's about foundation.
Good stuff. All right, Michael, absolute pleasure chatting to you tonight. Thank you so much for having the Vilic Law initial consultation with me.
No worries. My pleasure anytime.
All right. All the best. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.